Everybody, it's Marty the JavaScript Party and my buddy Rhett. She's feeling good today. It is 2:03 on Saturday. It's 74 degrees Fahrenheit outside. Actually 76 degrees. I believe that is, let's see, what was that? I just saw it a second ago. It's 74 degrees and that is 23.333 Celsius. So we are just slowly but surely grinding through, trying to sort of feel our way through a useful and scalable ThreeJS solution for something, so that basically the whole idea is to be able to explore and become good at ThreeJS and Angular. It's like, I don't know. It's to me the most obvious thing in the world, but something that took me a very very long time to remember to learn. Is just like, things are generally very simple or damn near impossible, and if they're damn near impossible, it's probably because you don't know what you're doing, and that happens a lot when you're still developing software. You know, they'll come in, they have a great idea. They're like, "Hey, I want you to do this, that, this, and that," and you're like, "Oh crap." And then you sort of have to struggle, bust through it. And then the next time you get that assignment, or a very similar assignment, it's a little easier. And then the next time it's very easy. And then the last time you do it, it's dirt simple. You can do it in your sleep. And the thing is then when you go back and look at your original efforts, they're crap. You know, you're like, oh man, I did a really crappy job. So you worked like 100 times harder, and you came out with 100 times worse result. And what stinks about the whole thing is that organizations, and maybe your management or your coworkers, or maybe people from other departments, when something is simple for you, they think it's easy, and those just are not the same. And I don't know. I've never. That's probably been one of my weak spots in my career, is trying to figure out how do you communicate that, hey, yeah, no, this is simple for me because I practice it and I do all kinds of stuff my own time, but it's not easy for everybody. For example, just doing these videos, right? Like, I make videos all the time, and then I watch myself in the videos, and then with time I've become very good at speaking. Like, we have to do remote meetings where we're just talking to the computer. Well, every hour I spend talking on into these videos, and then watching myself in the videos and seeing what works and what doesn't work, and what looks good and what doesn't look good, I get better at my job for doing remote videos. And then like for me, in the rare occurrences, I've worked in some places where you always have to have the camera on, but most places you don't have to have the camera on. And in the instances where I have to turn my camera on nowadays, which is very very rare, I am super comfortable with it. Right, I already have my background all set up for it. I know my lighting is all the way I want it. Everything is already ready to roll, and I've done it 1,000 times. Whereas, like the other people, oh my God, what you see on the other end is just epic. I mean, just some of the things that you see when you, especially if you're on a team and they first start turning their cameras on. I've seen some crazy, crazy things. So anyways, yeah, so here we are. We have finished up the three. This time we decided to create the geometry service on the 3 side first, and now on the ST side. And so just as basically an out loud reminder to myself, the ST side is where I'm going to do manipulations that are for show time and space, and the 3 side is for anything that's doing manipulations to 3JS. And one thing I did want to mention was that, like, I am playing with the idea of, like, I think the general concept is, like, when I create a base of anything, it just returns an empty, like, if the constructor will accept nothing. For example, when you create a geometry, like, you could just create 3 box geometry and you don't have to pass it anything. You know, it has defaults and all that. Creating that, well, so in this specific circumstance, I'm going to create a 3-box geometry, which is going to set aside a piece of space. And then I'm going to modify this 3 job. So if I want to change the width, I'll say like update width, update height, those sorts of things, right? I'm going to have functions to do things. Now, what if I return a box geometry, but then I need a sphere? I'll have a function that takes whatever is in the ID and replaces it with a sphere, which is going to be a full-blown new piece of memory, right? So the address, it'll create a whole new address. And so if I, by default, create a new piece of memory, and then the very next line, I'm turning it from a box geometry to a sphere geometry, is that going to be like a huge hit programmatically in the browser? Not programmatically, but in real-time execution. Is it going to be a huge hit? Because it has to destroy an old one, which is no big deal, right? Like it's just going to assign that to null, whatever was in that space, and then it's going to create a new one. And my argument is that I do not think that there's any performance hit at all. And if there is, there might be one right when it first happens, but that will be gone. And it's basically because there's a concept called optimization that they do on the in the browser for the JavaScript. And what happens is, like, you write your code, right? And right off the bat, right out of the beginning, when you when you actually build it, and it transpiles your TypeScript into JavaScript, there's going to be an optimization phase. And maybe or maybe not, that problem might be optimized away, right? So it's possible that when it converts it from TypeScript to JavaScript, that it'll see that, oh, he's creating this code is creating something, and then it never actually uses it. It just creates another thing. And it may optimize out right then. So it would never even get to the browser. But let's say it doesn't. Let's say that it does. It just blindly creates the JavaScript. And it says, okay, first thing I want it to do is create this JavaScript, and then, or first thing I want you to do is create this box geometry, and then the very next line is to set as cube geometry or sphere geometry. And so now those 2 lines of code actually get to the browser. The browser will do what is called tokenize that, and then turn it into machine code. And when it turns it into machine code, it basically takes all your loops and, well, I guess anything that you have, and it makes it all one long string of commands. It's no longer loops and stuff. It takes all those and makes them into one long string of commands, and then it does an optimization phase where it actually goes through and says, oh, okay, yeah, no, they're not doing anything here. This isn't doing anything there. Oh, okay, they're assigning something, and it's going to a piece of memory, and then they're reassigning it to another piece of memory. Yeah, let's skip that. So they do an optimization there. And then if you call the same set of code more than one time, it does a further optimization at that point. Like, let's say that you have like 6 choices, and every time it's the same result. It'll optimize away the other choices. Like, there's been massive effort that has gone into optimizing the code. So your job as a developer is to write code that is as understandable and maintainable as possible. And then unless there's some reason unless you've seen some kind of problem, it makes more sense to let the folks that write the optimization code focus on making the code that you write that's really well suited for humans to read more efficient for the computers to read. Now, there are times where those folks miss the mark, and then you need to go look and see if you can do some optimization on your part. But it is so rare. It's just such an unusual thing, and then sometimes you may not give it a choice. Like, let's say you do, I'm going to do a for loop, and I'm going to count from 1 to 10,000, with something in the middle there or whatever, changing the UI on every step or whatever. Like the browser, I mean, that code kind of has to do it because you said specifically that you want to do something specific. But if you're saying, hey, I want to assign something to something, and then by the way, I'm going to reassign that to something else, then I think the browser, I'm pretty confident that the browser can, or that the JavaScript engine can go, yeah, that's fine. If they're going to assign it to something, then assign something else that they didn't really want to ever assign it to the first thing to begin with. So that's why I don't worry about things like that. Now, trying to explain that is very, very difficult, as you've just seen this explanation, which I've tried a million times, or at least 500, at least 50 times, but probably closer to 200, maybe 500. It just is hard to explain that there's this optimization step, and that you should let that have, if your choice is more readable code or more optimized code, you should fail towards more readable code, because there's a very, very good chance, there's almost a 100% chance, there's a close to 100% chance that code's going to get optimized for you. So like, that's not really your job, but like a lot of times you just have a manager that just doesn't get it. Especially like if they were a back-end developer or something like that, because that concept doesn't exist in non-scripting languages. This is only a scripting language thing, and in compiled languages that is not a thing. It's just like a reality of runtime software development, and that's why getting your code, like, back-end people can read and review your code for like structure and readability and stuff like that, good, making sure it's good, nice, clean code. But they are awful at reading front-end code for optimization techniques, because they just don't have a clue what's going on. But anyways, and I do think I don't know if people tune in and watch my videos for that, but I do think that is an important thing to say. And by the way, speaking of that, there is I only watched like the first 15 minutes, but there's an Angular documentary that has become available, and I did not think it was going to be a good, like, I did not. I was fairly skeptical. I thought it was going to be not a very good, and it doesn't start off very good. It's very project managery to start, like the first couple minutes of it, but it moves pretty quickly into like the true guts of software development, and just the realities and all that. And I like I said, I've watched 15 minutes, but I definitely plan to watch the whole thing. I think it's a good idea. Now, I didn't get past the part where it was an Angular JS, and they were talking about like how amazing Angular JS was, and it was absolutely beautiful, a beautiful, beautiful language, just perfect for hobbyists. It was just absolutely perfect for hobbyists, and it was very, very good for like sort of, I don't know, like people who had to do like a small project for some reason, or maybe a small company that just needed a small utility or something. It was so perfect. Unfortunately, it did not scale particularly well, and I don't even think, no matter how careful you ever were, it was fairly limited in your ability to scale it. It was like, once you probably got to around 40 or 50,000 lines of code, it would just sort of implode on itself, which was a pretty good, because before Angular, I always said, with a good framework, you can get up to 12,000 lines of code before it was just unmaintainable. Without a framework, you can get up to like maybe 1,500, maybe 2,000 lines of code of JavaScript before everything just starts to come apart. And so you know, 40,000, 50,000, you can do a lot in 40 or 50,000 lines of JavaScript. Um, but you know, there were organizations and systems that needed to get bigger, and I don't think there's any actual. If you're very very careful, I think that the number of lines of Angular to Angular TypeScript that you can write before things sort of the wheels come off is in the hundreds of millions. I think you can get humongous before you start to run into like maintainability issues. Now you can screw it up. You could make it. You could get to 400 lines and have it completely unmaintainable if you don't know what you're doing. But you know, if an organization is very very careful, these things could get enormous before they kind of come apart on themselves. So, anyways, so this geometry was the first one that I started on the 3 side, and now I'm going to do the same thing on the um, ST side. So, and what I've been doing is I just, you know, so I guess this is a good way. I like doing this. I'll just sort of copy line by line, and sort of if something is different, then I'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, it makes sense that I need this and I didn't need that. So like the first thing that's different is this inject. I don't, well, actually, I think I might already have that. So if I hit Alt and my left key, it'll take me back here. Yeah, so I never use any kind of service, so I did not need the inject function. I didn't need to import the inject function, but I will need it. So that's the first line. We'll go a little faster once we get rolling, but so we definitely are going to need this recyclable sequence service, and then we're going to need the 3 version of the service because this is sort of a new thing, but we assign it a 3 version of it down here. So we're going to need to do something like that. And then we need the interface. So I'm going to copy those, but I'm going to go to the interface because I know there's something we need that we've been needing to add in the interfaces every time we go down this path. And that is in the, let's close the material and let's go to the, why am I, did I put it inside the material? I don't have a interface. I must have an interface for. Am I working on? I am. Oh, I think I'm working on geometry, right? Let me hit Alt left. Oh yeah, I'm working on the geometry. So I got pretty confused there. So I know in the geometry material interface, I need to add a 3 geometry. And I think I do 3 geometry. And I do not need this comma. And a 3 geometry, I have to go look at the app to figure out what that 3 geometry is supposed to be. I do not know it off the top of my head. So it is a 3 box geometry. So when we go to support the next kind, which I'm guessing will probably be a sphere geometry, or it could possibly be like a circle or a square. I think it's called a square. We will update that, but let's go back here to this. And so now it's going to be upset that we do not have 3 imported. So import everything as 3 from 3. I don't know why all cap 3 is the standard. I don't really know how I even got to that, but that is what we seem to be doing. Okay, and then that needs to be optional. And now everybody's happy. and 3 geometry, and we have our inject. And now let's go back to our material service. And let's just copy all of this. I mean, it's definitely not right because we need to change things over to geometry. So line 2 is good. We do want 3. We want I believe this is probably called geometry service. I believe if we go like that, yeah, it'll give me that. Comma. There we go. And now we want ST geometry. Interfaces ST. Okay, so we are good on the top 4 lines. We're good on the top 4 lines. Okay, line 6, that makes sense to pull in ThreeJS. And really all I'm doing right now is like further pounding in my head all these concepts so that if it ever truly matters, I'll be able to work quickly and effectively, and it'll be like, oh, that's so easy. And then everybody will try to figure out why it's not easy for them. And it's like, well, it's not easy for you because you didn't spend hundreds of hours working on this stuff. 3, and then it's geometry dictionary. Geometry dictionary. And then let's go back here again. What, Rhett? What did you call me? What did you call me, Rhett? All right, so now we want to inject our geometry service from the 3 side. So basically this guy up here. I still, like, every single time I think of that, I think, should I have called that 3 geometry service or T geometry service or something? Geometry. Have I been putting an O in there? Sometimes I'll do that. I'll just give myself like a little mind virus and just start naming stuff. Like I'll just rename. I'll just have a different spelling for something, and then that new spelling just sticks. All right, so I feel like we're good before the constructor now. I'm definitely feeling a lot more comfortable with this stuff. If I remember correctly, this one is super easy. So let's just go ahead and go with the lowest hanging fruit there. This is the thing that will get us, if something outside of this system has an ID, it can get the ID. So I think this needs to be Alt tabbed to the left a couple times. And then ST geometry tree, and then we'll get. So we are only doing this here so that we can, could be sure that that we have strong typing as we sort of scale up. It's sort of like, I don't know, just sort of to enforce things down if things go the way I'm kind of expecting it to go in the future. Might end up being just a total waste of time, but I don't think there's a lot of mental overhead that comes from that. And I think even without this, I think there's some argument to be made that I don't know, this should, I guess, be an ST geometry, so we don't have to worry about being confused and thinking it might be a 3 geometry. All right. And so why did we not need 3? Oh, because we need it for our other function. I thought I was all done. I was like, okay, guys, sign it off. We got one more method to implement, and that is our create basic geometry.
I love you.
I love you too, Rhett. Okay, base geometry. I feel like basic actually would have been a better name, but now we got it. We're creating an ST geometry, and that is of type ST geometry. And it's like, I don't even know what this is. What do we have in an ST geometry? I don't know. Let's go look at that. Let's go look real quick. All right, so we get a width, a height, a depth, a type, and an actual geometry. So let's just go ahead and copy that. Or you know what? We could do this. We could just say split right. I like that trick. And then over here, we can close it. It takes us back to here. So we can kind of see. A lot of times you can just boom. And now we have a pretty good view of what we need. Let's see. So we're going to go ST width is 1. Now, one of the things that I had always, like, early on, I remember last time when I was working on this, I had gone back and forth on whether these things should all be, like, represented at all. And then if they were going to be represented, you know, should they be required? You know, because, like, a cube doesn't have a width and it doesn't have a height. But it ended up being very, very helpful. Because when you switch the object, the ST object, from one type to another type, it's a really cool effect, because it remembers the old values. And sometimes when you're trying to do some sort of analysis, you end up with you know, you're kind of going back and forth between a cube and something else, and having the old values still in there is really, really helpful. All right, so now I wonder, we probably end up having to go back and add IDs. This ID probably should be in the actual object itself. But let's not do that now. But there's, and that's probably going to happen a bunch of times. So it's going to be like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward. It's just sort of the life we've chosen. Okay, so now we have our geometry ID, and now in our geometry service, we're going to get an actual geometry. Now, I can already see like a potential confusion in the future, and that's like right now we just created an actual ThreeJS geometry, and we could get that ThreeJS geometry, which I believe we probably do next. So ST geometry, we're going to get our ThreeJS geometry. Now let's say we do something that changes that geometry. So let's say we do this, and then the very next line is to change it from like a box to a sphere. What'll happen is will that box geometry will still exist because we have a reference to it on this object. We are not going to have a reference to the new one. So this 3 geometry, it is very possible that this 3 geometry will get out of sync with the geometry that has the ID that we want associated with it. So that's something that I'm going to really have. I guarantee I'm going to get burned by that at some point. And it'll be an interesting conversation when it happens. But it happens all the time in JavaScript, where you end up creating a you end up creating a reference to something that you don't need anymore, and that is what a geometry. That's what I think it's a bug, and that is a memory leak. That's exactly what they're talking about when they say memory leak. It would have been kind of nice just to name that ID. I love you, Rhett. You are a good girl, Rhett. And so yeah, at this point, I think I'm confident that what I should have done was I should have had an ID in here required, and then also assign that ID to this thing so that it knows what its ID is, because that ID is like something that I want to be immutable. I don't want that to change. But this thing, everything else would be mutable or changeable. Like, it could either change whatever reference it's pointing to or whatever value it has. In these cases, it would be the value, but in this, it's that. But that ID should always stay the same. Once it's been created, it should never ever change. And then it should have its own version in here. So, yeah, so once you have one of these things, you have no way of knowing where it is. So yeah, I definitely need to add that. Yeah, I'll probably do that tomorrow. I don't want to because, it's kind of a bummer. But I will say that it is nice. This is where it's really nice to use TypeScript, because tomorrow, like, literally all I have to do is come in here and do this ID, number, and then I'm using, I think I should just use semicolons everywhere, and then hit save, and it'll tell me everywhere it's broken. And in most places where it's broken, I'll be able to easily fix it. There's 2 places it's broken, one in the camera service. Well, it looks like it's only broken in one place, so I can come here and it's up there, ST camera ID. Why do I have, do I have a camera ID over there? Let me go back. Alt, I'm hitting the wrong one. Oh, okay. So yeah, so I think that does make sense. So that's what I should have done. Apparently I'm not doing that for geometry. I'm not doing that. I'm pretty sure I'm not doing that for material. Let's see. I don't think I'm doing it for mesh, but yeah. Render. Oh, so I'm doing it for renderer and scene. So for scene, I need to add the ID. And then for the other ones. So I'm hoping, yeah, I probably should do that first thing tomorrow. And then I can't, normally what I would like to do is try out my geometry code that I just created, but I can't because it is all dependent on the mesh. So hopefully I can get those things done and get the mesh, a good start on the mesh. And then once mesh is done, I'll be able to add meshes. I can use the new code to add the meshes, and then once I can add new meshes, hopefully we can see a mesh up here. And then we need to get animations working, and then we need to get unit tests working, and then we need to get end-to-end tests working, which should be fun, and then do a commit. So anyways, 36 minutes, not terrible for a weekend. Happy coding, everybody. Bye.